What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. This week's episode is brought to you by the UX Playbook. Do you feel lost in your UX career journey? Well, let UX Playbook be your roadmap to success. Handcrafted by my buddy Chris Wynn for UX designers just like you, these bundles offer comprehensive guides on everything from UX fundamentals to portfolio creation to nailing your job search. It's packed with hundreds of videos and Notion guides with real-world examples, pro tips, and exclusive bonuses. And all that makes the UX Playbook your one-stop shop to elevate your career. And because I know because I know this will be a game changer for you, I've partnered with the folks at the UX Playbook to get everybody listening 10% off their fast track bundle if you use the code BEYOND when you check out. So head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/playbook and use the code BEYOND and save yourself nearly $25. Don't wait. Get your UX journey back on track. Get your UX journey back on track with the UX Playbook and transform your career from fuzzy to focused. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much more than you could imagine. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, and Kevin for all their support. And if you want to join those fine folks and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. That's less than $1 an episode. And if you do that, you'll get some sweet perks for your support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So there's something about the UX job market. It's just like there's titles everywhere. There's names everywhere for everything. And who knows? Like I do this, you do that. We all call ourselves product designers, UX designers, whatever. It's really hard to know what we actually do when we get the job and we start on day one. And I'm going to talk to my good buddy, Michelle Pakron, another fellow New Orleanian, by the way, which I'm really excited to have her on. We're going to talk about how, none of that matters. What matters is that you shape this job around you and what you want to do. So we're going to talk about that today. So I'm really excited. Michelle, like I said, is a fellow New Orleanian, and you are actually, I think you're the second New Orleanian I've actually interviewed who's not in New Orleans. Corey Nelson. Do you know him from LinkedIn?
He sounds familiar, but my brain is like,
yeah, he's from LaPlace. Turns out we were both born in Lakeside Hospital, which is like super bizarre.
Well, I was born in Lakeside Hospital.
No way! Oh my God!
All right, everyone was born there.
I guess that's true. Everybody.
That's where babies come from.
What are the odds? 3 people all born in the same hospital. Okay, I love it. It makes me super excited. I don't know. I get giddy talking to people from New Orleans, especially not being in New Orleans anymore.
It's pride, man. It's like seeing, I'm wearing my Rush t-shirt. If I saw someone else wearing this, we're best friends immediately. So it's the same thing. It's part of a trend.
Yeah, hell yeah. You hear someone say, yeah, you're right. You're like, wait, hold on. Where are you from? All right. Michelle is a self-described elder of the internet who's been designing since the late 90s. She studied psychology and graphic design at the University of New Orleans and quickly moved into digital design after taking a course that featured Macromedia Director back in the day. From there, she taught herself interactive design and then web design and HTML, CSS. Years and years of leveling up, learning new skills, and growing in the industry commenced. And she has worked in many industries, including death care, e-gov, finance, healthcare, and software. And a few years ago, for kicks and giggles, she went to grad school and got an MBA. Currently, Michelle is head of UX design at ChaiOne. Is it ChaiOne or ChaiOne?
ChaiOne. It has a tea background and a whole story, but yeah, everyone's like ChaiOne chai. Yeah, it's ChaiOne.
ChaiOne, an experience-led digital consultancy headquartered in Houston that specializes in industrial and enterprise clients. Michelle is also part of the corporate faculty at Harrisburg University, where she develops and teaches multiple courses in the Human-Centered Interaction Design Master's Program. And on top of all this, Michelle is an artist, photographer, jewelry maker, and collector of Lego minifigs. She also has way too many Grogu's. Don't judge. Michelle, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you on. How's it going?
It's good. It's nice to be here, and it's always fun to talk to someone else, from the homeland.
Hell yeah!
Like
I had it in my
city, but it's its own little homeland, it's a little country.
It is. I actually had in my notes to say, Michelle, where you at? And I completely forgot.
Yeah, bro.
So I just, where you at, bro? Where you at? All right. So, Michelle, it's really great to have you on. I think this topic is really important today. It's so confusing. There's so many job titles. Who knows what you're going to do? Teams, they all do different things. And I think what's really important is that we figure out what we want and shape that job around us. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that today. before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know I read that extensive bio, but tell us a little bit more about you and how'd you get in this gig?
Sure. So, the funny thing about my background is it's like a mix of like way too much education and an enormous amount of self-education. So it's kind of weird. I don't know how to get to where I am today with only one path. Because I
Mm,
think if you were going just like the formal education path, there's still, I mean, I teach in a program, and I can tell you when you get out of these programs, you're still a junior baby.
oh
Um,
yeah,
there's still so much more. And then the self-education path is its own thing, and it's so much easier nowadays to do that path than when I started. Because I'm
yeah.
talking, I was teaching myself web design back in the day where it was view source, and it was literally me going, how you built this, reverse engineer, mess with crap,
Hmm.
see what blows up. Oh, that didn't blow up. Like, really,
Yeah.
like the wrong way to learn this stuff. That's the path I took. The absolute most ridiculous path possible,
Yeah.
the hard way. That's what I did. So I have this weird combination of just way too much education, and beyond that, taught myself everything that I know. So I've got that going on. But the point of that is that I'm one of those people who just wants to know everything, and I mean that sincerely. To the point of it makes my brain hurt because I can't focus on any one thing because I want to do 400 things at the same time. But it's why I know how to do so much stuff. And it's one of the reasons why I love just UX as an industry, because there is no
Mm,
one definition of what UX is.
right.
There is no one role within UX that rules them all. There is so many different skill sets that you don't have to decide you have to do all of them, or you could just do one or two or whatever. There's so much there. So kind
Yeah.
of like one of the reasons why I love photography is that you could be a photographer for 10 years and just scratch the surface on what's possible. There are so many different subfields within photography. You're never done learning and leveling up.
Yeah.
UX is like that. If you like leveling up, if you don't ever want to get to the end of something and be done and like, okay, I've reached the summit of Everest. Now what? Like, I imagine that if you have climbed Everest and you got to the top, what's the next step for you in your life? Oh, okay, climb down the mountain, but now you've done that. So what the heck beats Everest? With
Yeah.
UX, there is no Everest, I don't believe. There's always something new for you to learn. And there's always a new level. And I really, really appreciate that. And I forgot what we're talking about other than I'm a nerd
This.
and I like knowing stuff. There you go.
I love it. No, that's perfect. Well, you're the perfect person to talk to, and especially being a teacher. And I guess, are you considered a professor? Is that
I
what is
am.
the correct title?
That
Okay,
university
so
calls me
professor.
Professor Pakron, and so do my students. So we'll go with
Right
that.
on. All right. So I don't want to. I no disrespect you. I don't want to say teacher if you're not a teacher, or not a professor. So being a professor, this is probably something I imagine. You hear a lot about. You don't really learn the real world in school and stuff like that. But I'm kind of curious, like you as a professor teaching students at a university level, how do you go about preparing your students for this concept that the UX job market is just all over the place. The titles are a mess. Companies don't know what to do with people, or they have completely different ideas of what they should do. How do you talk to students and prepare them for that mentally? Because
Bluntly,
bluntly,
I don't know any other way to do
that's
it.
the way to do it. Yeah, how do you do it? Right.
I'm one of the few people who teach my program who aren't like professional educators because I'm
Mm,
corporate faculty. I have a day job that's in the field, and I focus on practical knowledge. I don't do theory.
yeah.
I don't care about theory. I don't think that's going to help you get a job or help you perform your job. So I focus on this is the real stuff you need to learn. This is the stuff that matters. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what you need to do. And I'm just blunt and as honest as possible. And I use a lot of stories for my, professional life and when I'm teaching the classes. And hopefully through that, I am helping my students kind of get a better understanding. Because I know a lot of the training, depending on what you go through, I've never taken a boot camp, but from the things that I've heard, all of it is so positive and
Hmm.
fluffy. And I
Yeah.
am just by nature not a very fluffy person. Not that I'm like anti-fluffy. What's the right word? Just like I tell the truth. So whatever that is, spiky,
Yeah.
but with a smile. How's that?
I love it.
Yeah.
It works
So
for
I
me.
just try to be as honest as possible about the realities, and like I'm excited right now because I was able to convince our program director that we need an actual user interface design course because we have none of that. And I had students who were like completely oblivious as to how to do any kind of user interface design. And I'm like, these people aren't going to get jobs because the UX
Right.
market, the way it is now, everyone is expected, if you're getting a UX designer job, that you can do full UX all the way through to high fidelity design. You can't just be like a boxes and arrows
Right.
person. You won't be able to
Yeah.
get a job.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can get into like, oh, that shouldn't be part of UX. Man, go cry somewhere else. This is the
Yeah.
profession. These are
Right.
the
This is what,
expectations
yeah.
for this role right now. So you can, get mad about it or learn what you need to learn so you can be employable. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to help people be as employable as possible.
No, I love that. And that's something I don't hear a lot of people talking about. Well, actually, well, people talk about it, but
Because
like
the
people
UX,
in the education industry, at least,
well, that, but all of like a lot of the UX people who did not come from my, I feel like a lot of people in my age range, whatever, who have been around for, 20 plus years, they either come from my background, which is design, web design, and then it just became UX, or they
Yeah.
come from a more academic or like information architecture place, a human factors place, which is a very
Right.
different place. And those people do not have formal training in design. And they tend to downplay
Yeah.
the importance of design, of visual design. Oh, it's just decoration, it's just art. That stuff makes me psychotic. It's
Yeah.
it's so disrespectful. So I'm obviously not that person. I'm this person over here. Design was my base. That's my number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So I'm very pro the belief that good design is a huge, massive part of what we do, and you cannot ignore it.
Yeah, I know. I love that. So I'm curious because when people come out of school when they're starting out, right? You've got this sort of idea that like, nobody really has a very clear definition of what exactly a UX designer will do, product designer, whatever the role is. Everybody's got these different, ideas, which on one hand is interesting because it's like you mentioned, you can always explore. It's very exciting. There's always another Mount Everest to climb. But then on the other hand, that's very intimidating for a lot of people. It could be intimidating for a lot of people because a lot of people are going to be like, well, if I can do anything, I'm sort of get like sort of paralysis of choice in a way. Like, where do I go? What do I do? Where do I start? And you sort of have a hard time even beginning that journey. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, what types of advice do you have for your students there when you're trying to prepare them for this sort of open-ended, almost like, almost like a game or something, like a video game where you like open world game where you could literally go anywhere. It's like, I don't even know where to start. What kind of
Start
advice do you
anywhere.
start anywhere? Yeah.
I mean, look, when you're first starting out in this field, like any field, you're going to, like, say if you're going to be a doctor, no doctor starts day one, they're a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
You've got to go and do the internship. You've got to go, when you do that type of thing, you're doing like, okay, you're doing a rotation in the ER, you're doing a rotation in internal medicine, you're trying everything. And then you're going, you know what, I really enjoyed internal medicine. I think I want to do that. Or, you know what,
Hmm.
I want to be an endocrinologist, or I want to be a pediatrician. You've got to go broad first
Yeah.
and kind of try a little bit of everything and try a few different fields before you start going, you know what, this I really, really love. This I don't love as much. And then you could start kind of, I mean, maybe it's like, how they have E shaped or T shaped. I like the cone
Hmm.
shaped, bunch of
Yeah.
little, like your little springs coming up. But figure out the things that you are really, really interested in and then get deeper over time. Don't try to go
Yeah.
super deep right away because you're just going to wind up having too much specialized knowledge in one thing. And that's really hard to do when you're a junior because you're going to be competing with people who are way more experienced than you, who have a generalized knowledge as well as that specialized knowledge. So I
Hmm.
recommend that if you're just kind of coming out of a boot camp or coming out of a program or whatever, try to find a job that is much broader and lets you do a little bit of everything so that you have the opportunity to see what's out there. And then, it's funny, I work at an agency right now and I come from the enterprise world mostly, but I would tell someone earlier in your career, that's when you should go work agency. Because at an agency, you're going to work on a bunch of different types of projects where you have to work really quickly and deal with a lot of stuff really, really fast. That's going to be like your hazing. Let's call it that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a good way to get your feet wet in a lot of different things. And then you can maybe pick where you want to go. But one of the advantages of working enterprise is enterprise tends to have more money and bigger budgets. And so you're
Yeah.
more likely in enterprise to get training like formalized
Yes.
training to go. I mean, I
Yeah.
used to, when I worked in death care, I mean, I don't know if you remember back in New Orleans, the company was called Stewart Enterprises, but they owned
Yeah, I remember.
What is it? Lake Lawn Metairie.
Lake Elementary, yeah.
Yeah, they own that one. But they sent me all over the country to learn SharePoint.
They were
I
like one of
got
the
to go to
biggest funeral home corporations are in the country, weren't they?
number
At the time?
3. And
Number
then they
three,
were
they were
bought by
huge, yeah.
number 1, so they don't even
Yeah,
exist
okay.
anymore,
They don't
really.
exist. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
passing
SCI
that
bought them.
building all the time when I was a kid on vets. Anyway, yeah. So, by the way, real quick, when you say death care, is that a real thing? Or are you making the joke about
No,
it?
that
Was
is the name of the
oh,
industry.
I was
No, so
laughing because I'm
basically people who
thinking like,
work in
okay,
funeral homes or on cemeteries, that whole industry is called the death care industry. Yeah.
I thought you were like making a joke about like healthcare or
No, I wish
something.
it
I
had a
had no
sexier
idea.
title, but
Now I feel bad laughing because I actually thought you were like making a joke about it. I had no idea. It was knowing your personality. I'm just like, oh, she's joking.
not just making
Um,
stuff.
I okay. Now I feel terrible. So I had a question and I completely lost it because I was thinking.
What were we talking
Um,
about? Man.
no, so this is the beauty of editing and post production. What the hell was I going to ask you? I was like, I had a question. I was like, wait, let me ask about death care real quick because oh shit, man, I don't know what it was. I'll figure it out. So when we talk about this idea that you can go and do anything that you want, I love that what you're talking about. I actually had an interview not long ago with Laura Baker, and she mentioned this, like, say yes to everything when you're a junior, you know, and just kind of going out there and like exploring everything, find out what you want. And actually it's funny because I've been thinking about this analogy with like doctors. It's like nobody starts out as an ENT. You go and you do all the general medicine, the general practice, you do all that stuff, and then you become an ENT once you've got like, all the other stuff. But nobody just starts out in med school day one saying, I'm going to be an ENT. I'm only going to learn about noses and throats and stuff, and I'm never going to learn about anything else. So I think that's really cool. I love that. The other thing too, I think this is something when you mentioned, now I remember what I was going to say. When you talked about working in an agency first, I see a lot of people, junior designers, that are desperate to get a job. They just wanted any job, any UX job, and they will take, a lot of times I've seen them take single, sole designer, I call them lone wolf type roles as like their first job, their early job, and they just like, well, I got to get a UX job. And I actually did this back in 2011, was my first UX job. And I got a job as UX designer working at a little agency, and we did apps and stuff for the people. And I worked there for 3 or 4 years. At the end of 3 or 4 years, I thought I was an expert. I was like, I know everything. I know everything. And then when I got a job on a team with people who actually knew what they were doing, I realized I had no idea what I was doing, 3 years, 4 years in. And I just think like I wasted 3 or 4 years learning from people who knew what they were actually doing, And so when you get a job at an agency or on a larger team, you're continuing that education, just like you were saying, you're still a baby. You could have a master's degree, whatever. You're still a baby junior designer when you get out of school. And I think that's something a lot of people make that mistake of. Their first job or one of their first jobs is by themselves, and they're
What
missing
I
out on
did.
all that education,
That's what I did. I didn't have a choice. When I got out of
Yeah.
school, it took me a year to get my first full-time job. And I was the lone web designer at Stewart Enterprises on this web team. And it was me and a developer and a production person. And that was the team. And back then the web was like this weird thing. We were this strange little team that no one understood because everyone else were green screen designers and
Mhm.
developers and stuff like that. I spent 10 years there just trying to learn everything on earth the absolute hard way.
Mhm.
If you're going to be the sole UX person, the only way you can be successful at that and really grow is you've got to be incredibly self-directed. And
Yeah.
luckily I am, but that doesn't work for everybody. I've got
Yeah.
employees, I've met people in my life. They need outside direction. They need someone to put them on a path and to check them and all that type of stuff. Not everybody's like that. You have to figure out who you are as a person. I would never recommend someone do that. Go be the sole UX person right out the door unless you have got the ability to just learn anything all by yourself, and also have the ability to like realize when you do crappy work and seek out people and seek out resources to make yourself better. It's not the, if I was starting over today, no, I would want to have leadership. I would want to have someone that I could learn from instead of trying to do everything on my own. It's definitely not the easiest way to go. I wouldn't recommend it. But it is what
Yeah.
it is. Sometimes when you need a job, dude, that's the job that's been offered to you. I'm not going to go live in a van down by the river just because I have all these like whatever
Right.
ideals of needing leadership. I
Yeah.
need money. So
Yeah.
get the job that, that someone's willing to give you and then make the best of it. But if you get that type of job and you aren't self-directed, you need to figure out how to get a mentor outside of that job,
Hmm.
someone who can look at your work and give you guidance, because otherwise you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found, like, for me at least, and this was 2011, YouTube may have been around, but it certainly wasn't the same as it is today. And you didn't have the content creators making videos on how to be a UX designer and all this crap back then. It was a lot of, Adobe Classroom in a book or something. And if it
Yes.
wasn't in a book, like I wasn't learning it. A UX Design for Dummies may have been a book back then. But, that's something that I think even today, and I think that's sort of a trap, though, where you see all these videos online and you just assume, well, I'll just learn it as I go, or, whatever. And I think some people certainly can. But, going back and just like you said, it's like, it's the hard way, and I think a lot about, like, I used this analogy the other day of, like, trying to learn to do a backflip. Like, you could go on YouTube and you could watch videos of how to do a backflip, and then you could go in your backyard and try to do a backflip.
Break
Like,
grace.
I don't want to do that, like, or I could go to a gym or find people who have done backflips and know how to do it and say, no, you're not standing right. No, here's this harness. Here's a safety equipment, whatever. And I'll teach you how to do it so you don't land on your head. And so, yes, you could learn how to do a backflip, but like you said, like, it'll probably take you longer. You'll probably fail a lot. You'll probably hurt yourself. Or you could learn to do it a lot faster with hands-on experience with somebody who's
There's
showing
more
you how to do it.
experts now.
Yeah.
You can throw a stick and there's an expert in
Yeah.
this realm of teaching whatever it is you care about. 20 years ago,
Yeah. Right.
there was
Right.
nobody. So like when I was trying to learn SharePoint, dude, there was nothing. I had
Hmm.
to become the expert in order to
Yeah.
do stuff, and went to all the training I could possibly find, and I made myself an expert, and I got really, really good at doing stuff in SharePoint. But there was no one else to learn from. And I
Yeah.
think nowadays people have just a buffet of
Hmm.
people that they can learn stuff from. There's so many, not that there's a ton of 20 plus year veterans
Yeah.
out there, but we exist. There are
Yeah.
people out there definitely who have 10 and 15 years of experience. So it's never been easier to find knowledge. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of like jealous. I'm
Yeah.
super jealous, man. I feel like the
Yeah.
old lady, like back in my day, we didn't have the Google. Y'all have the Google. Now I have Copilot. Dude,
Yeah. I know.
I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm just like, if I had Copilot when I was in high school,
Oh my God.
man,
Watch out.
it's amazing.
So this begs the question, though, because you can, throw a stick. You can't, you can't throw a stick without hitting an expert.
Yeah.
How does a junior designer who has no experience know who those experts are to trust? Or they're like, this could be a whole episode on its own, probably, but in a few minutes, I guess, are there like red flags or something that you would say, like, watch out for these people and maybe learn from this type of person versus another type, or
Yeah.
anything, like, watch out for this and don't fall for that?
I think that there are quite a few people who, and I don't, is this an analogy or metaphor? I always get them confused. But I say there are people who like literally just learn across the street and then they're like, I'm going to teach you how to cross the street because I'm an expert.
Hmm.
So is that an analogy?
Yeah, sure. That's
Okay,
an
so
analogy.
it's
Yeah,
not an
that work.
analogy. But there's a lot of folks like that on LinkedIn right now who have
Hmm.
like just barely any experience in anything. And they're like, I'm going to teach others how to do what I just did. I probably would not want to learn from those folks because they just like crossed the street that one time. If I
Yeah.
really wanted to become a professional street crosser, I'd go talk to someone who's done it like 1,000 times because, man,
Hmm.
they know the tricks of how to cross the
Yeah.
street. So look and see the kind of experiences they have. See how long they've actually been doing this and at what level, and see if they leveled up too fast. And what I mean by that is sometimes people get vanity titles. They're 6 months
Yeah.
in and someone decides to give them some giant title. And now they're
Yeah.
like, look at me. And I'm like, you have to really look at how much experience somebody has and the quality of that experience. Part of, doing something for a length of time is not that you're doing one thing, is that you're doing lots of different things and you're learning from every single experience, and those experiences grow upon each other. And you're building all these different connections in your brain. And every time you deal with a new problem, you're relying on all that new data and all the old data, and you're creating new connections, and your brain's getting all big and blah, blah, blah. Your brain isn't going to do that if you don't have that breadth of experience. And you can't just like hustle culture your way to that next mountain. You can't do it. It takes
Yep.
time. So look, so Debbie Levitt does a good job. I think she's talked about this before, of how to like think critically and ascertain the
Yeah.
quality of the information that you're getting. You have to go look at somebody's background, look at what they were actually doing. If you're getting advice from someone on LinkedIn about UX design and you look them up and they are product managers or developers, you might want to not trust that quite to the same level, because they are not experts in the thing that you want to do. Doesn't mean that what they're saying is wrong. It means that you have to really critically think about this type of stuff. And just, I know it takes time and effort. No one wants to do that. Everybody just wants to go, oh, blah, blah is really nice. And they're smiling and they said something this, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to go and investigate, but it doesn't take that much time to go and spend your 30 seconds of Googling to find out if someone actually has a background that's deep enough in what you care about. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that you mentioned Debbie Levitt too, because I had her on the show specifically to talk about like the critical thinking series that she does and all this stuff. And the first thing when I asked her to come on, she's like, I don't think I'm the best person for that. I'm like, you're the first person I think of when I think about it. And then you mentioned her name too.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's just kind of funny. I'm just like, obviously Debbie, she didn't
there.
Anyway.
So the people you really want to listen to are the people who aren't who aren't advertising themselves as the experts. She does a ton of stuff, and it's all free, the stuff she does, but she's put out hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube. She's constantly putting out training. She has an entire course on how to use Axure that she made for free. She has done so much for this community, and hardly anybody realizes it, because she's not out there like got her face on everything and trying to like, those are the people I respect, because it's, and I realize everyone needs to make money. I get it. Our houses aren't paid for with like duct tape or whatever. We have to like pay for it with money. But I respect the people who are out there educating people for the love of it, because they feel a real genuine need to do that. And they're the ones generally who aren't like, I'm an expert. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you mentioned.
Let's talk about Debbie for an hour. But we can.
No, it's just funny you mentioned. I thought of her. You mentioned her, and she's over here saying that she's not the person to talk. I'm like, get out of here, get out of here,
get out of here.
You're absolutely all right. So something that I want to take this back to sort of like this idea of needing to have that self direction. You mentioned something when we talked a couple of weeks ago about having the audacity to ask for something, right, and not waiting around for someone to tell you what to do or provide you with instructions or whatever, right? You get in this job and who knows what they're going to have you do, but you want to do a thing and you're just waiting around for someone to tell you that thing. They were never going to do it. So I want to, if you could just talk a little bit for me about this idea in your head and like what you're thinking, and what do you tell your students when it comes to this concept of, don't wait around for someone to tell you what to do. Ask for some help or do the thing or whatever you think you have to do. Just take that ownership. What kind of advice do you give your students to help them kind of get in that mindset?
It's the same advice I give my employees or anybody I mentor. When you go to work somewhere, you have this, they'll tell you, here's what the job description is, and here's the things we want you to do. But there's a ton of unknowns. Every single job I've ever had started out really narrow in its definition. And then just by its nature, it grew and grew and grew. And one of the reasons it grew is because I found ways to make it mine. Every single job, I made it mine. I found new things to do. I found new Everests to climb, and I asked for more responsibility. And in that way, I was able to get leadership skills without ever, before I ever got an actual leadership title, because leadership isn't necessarily a title bestowed upon you. It's not an honor to be a leader. It's a role that you do where you are taking on responsibility. And if you're someone who likes responsibility, that's all you need to be a leader. And if that's something you're trying to do in your life, in your career, you want to be a leader, you've got this idea that you want to be a director of UX or whatever, you don't have to wait and put your 18 million years in before someone gives you the director of UX position. You start day one. What can I own? What can I take over? What can I get awesome in? How can I help someone else? How can I show that I'm willing to help people around me and willing to take responsibility off other people because that's really what leadership is you're taking the pain for someone else. If you think leadership is bossing people around, well, you're wrong. So there you go. Okay.
Right.
Anyway, I'm off on a tangent again. What were we talking about?
Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Have the audacity to ask. Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, no, so I love that. So, so something else you mentioned, talking about leadership roles, something else that I found was like really intriguing that you mentioned a couple of weeks back when we talked, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe it like this. So there's not even a question. I really just want to have you talk about this a little bit. But you mentioned UX is a leadership role,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's this idea that we don't really have the authority, which again, just like you just said, authority and leadership are not the same thing necessarily. But our job is to instruct or what's the right word? Inspire is the word I like to use a lot, but it's really it's more than inspiring. It's really direct the way that we build the software so that it is the best possible experience that we can have for our users and stuff. So I love that idea. I want to talk about that a little bit. Just UX is a leadership role. What does that mean to you when you think about that?
So for me, if we think about the process of developing an application, you've got all this discovery you're doing all this research, and then you're designing it. You're obviously not just designing, picking wet colors and typography and all that cool stuff.
Mhm.
You're trying to figure out all the user flows. And one of the things I teach my students is your job is to design for task flows. You're a task flow designer. That's really the job of a UX designer. You're trying to figure out what the tasks someone cares about and design for them. You are designing, you're more of an architect, the same way like an architect of a building. They're the one with the vision. Everyone else, no matter how technical their role is in getting that giant skyscraper built, is referring to your plan of action. And you're
Mhm.
kind of like seeing it through, because when you're designing for the people who are actually going to be using this thing, it's just by itself, it's the thing that has the most impact on the product, on the building. And so no matter what you want to call what it is you're doing, you are leading everyone else, because, you could possibly make a bunch of Figma wireframes and throw them over a proverbial wall and then hope the developers make it. Of course, if
Mhm.
you do that, you're advocating, what is the word? Abdicating. Words
Abdicating, yeah.
help. You are abdicating your responsibility by doing that. So one of the things I'm very loud about is you must own that relationship between design and development, and you
Mhm.
must own the actual implementation. It doesn't mean you own the code, but it means that you need to have your QA with your developers. You need to be reviewing the developed work, and you need to be making sure that the developers are building what you design, because it's not just what it looks like, it's how it works, it's the interactions, it's the micro interactions, it's the copy, all of that type of stuff. It's making sure all of that has been fully implemented according to this vision. And so that is a leadership role. It means you've got to insert yourself in there and go, no, I'm not just going to give you mocks. I'm going to be part of this with you. We're going to work
Yeah.
together. We're going to make sure this gets built and it's awesome. You can't do that if you don't present yourself in a leadership capacity.
Yeah. So it's awesome that you mentioned that. In my experience, I've worked on a lot of different teams over my career, and I have had some product managers and engineers that were happy to collaborate. I've had other engineers and product managers that kept me at arm's length. But I've had very few engineers and product managers that didn't accept me when I asked to be involved. Very few. I've had a couple that just like didn't, and that to me is more personality than anything else. But they were the exception,
Yeah.
I think. And so I'm thinking more about like just this idea that you just said before, to have the audacity to ask. There's going to be teams, and I'm curious what your perspective is. There's going to be product managers, engineers who just ask for wireframes and never talk to you again. And they want the specs and they'll say, I'll see you later. It's your responsibility to try to be involved. It's your responsibility to push to be involved.
You need to drive them crazy, 100%.
Yeah.
You need to be their friends. One of the things I tell people is, here's two best friends you got to have: product manager or owner, whoever's in that position. If you actually have that position, because believe me, I've worked at places where they don't have that. So
Yeah.
I just decided I was that position. Hey, do it. Like I said, don't ask permission. And your developers. Most of my career, I actually had a development partner. I'm used to working very, very closely with development teams. And it's hard for me to ever just throw something over a wall. You know, when I
Hmm.
first moved here to Houston and I went to work at Invesco, was the first time I wasn't actually the front end developer, actually building what I designed. Because normally I would design and I would build it, and then I would work with my developer and he would hook up the back ends and do all that good stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I went to go work at Invesco, I was on a team where we were the UX team, and then we had a front end development team, and then we had a back end team. And I was like, oh my God, I have to trust other people to do work. But one of the things I did, and we had product owners, which was the first time I
Yeah.
worked in Agile. So I was like, me and the product owner have got to be two sides of the same coin. We
Yep.
have to work together. And then, of course, I'm a giant nerd. My first friends there were the front end developers. I was like, let's be friends. We love CSS. Come on. But you need to be friends with these people.
Yeah.
And that's how you don't start off by just throwing stuff out there. You know, I'm going off in outer space here, but I remember being in a meeting. It was one of our little scrum meetings, and there was another UX person in the room, and he said something, and I saw one of the lead developers just rolling his eyes because of what the guy said. He didn't understand the technical under what he was saying, and I was like, that's a mistake. Not that the developer rolled his eyes, but that he doesn't
Yeah.
understand the technology. And this is a problem I think a lot of UX people have nowadays, is the ones who didn't, like me, come up with technical
Right.
skill sets. They do not know how the sausage is made at all. They have
Yeah.
no concept or understanding of it. And that is one of the main reasons why developers don't want to play with you, because they
Yeah.
know you have no understanding of what it is they do.
Yeah.
And they just assume that you like crayons and stuff and like pushing pixels in Figma. You got
Yeah.
to become friends with them, and you also have to spend the time asking them questions. Go, tell me what your stack is. Help me understand how you're doing this. Oh, you're into React. Cool, blah, blah, blah. You need to know what those words mean. You need to understand the basics of this technology. That is going to help you. That is going to be your bridge to allow you to have a relationship with your development team, which
Yeah.
I just think it's incredibly critical for any UX team. If you don't have that relationship, you are going to be upset with the output that you get. It's the way that is.
Every time, probably too.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like you mentioned this, and I have, my background was in web development and web design, and so I came up in a similar way as how I ended up getting into UX design through web design. And you know, people ask a lot like, should I learn to code? And this is like an ongoing debate. Should UX designers learn to code? They don't need to learn how to write functions and actually implement things
Yeah.
all on their own, but they have to be able to speak the language of whatever the developers are using. And you mentioned, you know, if it's React, if it's CSS, if it's you know, whatever, because some native applications don't use CSS. So learning CSS is going to help you, but you've got to understand how to speak their language, because your job, just like you said, is to deliver this stuff to them so they can build it as easily as possible with as little friction as possible, so they don't deviate from what you've designed, because they will choose the path of least resistance every time. And if you've made it hard for them, guess what? They're going to ignore you. So like, how do you make it easy, you know, for them to do their job?
So I tell my employees, look, your users for your mocks in all of these designs are not the end user right
Yeah.
now. It's
I
the
love that. Yeah.
developers. How are
Yeah.
you going to deliver this to them so that they can do their job properly? And I also tell them, developers, be lazy. And I mean that like real sweet, like, because I'm lazy too. And I believe laziness is a good thing. Laziness gives you more time to look up dumb crap on the internet, which is super important. So to me, laziness is how we get advancements. It's how we get more productive. But a lot of times developers will find the easiest way possible to do something. If you're doing React stuff and you've designed some control and they're like, oh, there's another control. Oh my, exactly like that in React's library over here already. I'll just use that. You
Yeah.
need to be able to communicate that I don't care that there's
Yeah.
that one over there. I want you to update the HTML and the CSS and JavaScript that correspond to this to do this because of XYZ. You need to be explicit in that type of stuff, because otherwise the developers are going to think it doesn't really matter. But if you are communicating this stuff to your developers, if you're actually showing them what you're doing and you have them be part of the process. You know, one of the things I did when I was a product owner and the UX lead at the same time, I did this when I worked at a healthcare system here in Houston,
No,
is
that's an interesting mix.
it is, but it's a perfect
Yeah.
mix.
Perfect mix. Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
tell you straight up, I think product managers and product owners, the best people are people who come
Yeah.
from UX.
Absolutely.
Absolute best position to become those people, 100%. But in any case, The start of every sprint, I would get my developers in a room and I would go, this is what we're building this, because I got to decide that. Yay. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're doing. And I would show them the whole flow. I would explain everything that was going on. And then they would go, you know what? I think there's an easier way to do this. And I'd be like, tell me. And
Yeah.
then they would give me feedback and stuff like that. And then I would update things if they did have a better idea. But they got to be part of stuff. I didn't
Yeah.
dictate things to them, but I also didn't go, oh, I've got, if they gave me an idea and I didn't agree with it, they didn't win. I got to win. But people still get to have ideas. And if you make and you allow other people on the team to actually be part of this a little bit more, I think you'll get better relationships. You'll get a better overall output. But
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to tell this story too, and I think you'd probably appreciate this, but one of the things we used to do back in an old team that I was on, it was an enterprise space. We were designing software for engine shops, component repair shops that were fixing these jet engines, and it was for the shop floor. And we had a very, very convoluted, complicated process, right? And I can't tell you like how many times I had engineers like argue with me about something, right? In the interface. They're like, that doesn't make sense. This button shouldn't be here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't think they don't understand. They don't understand the system and the process, right? And they have like great ideas about how to implement stuff, but they were trying to like help me with the interface. And I'm like, guys, this is wrong. So what I realized was like they didn't understand what the software was being used for. So I was like, what if we take them on a research trip? What if we like bring them along as a note taker? And so the next time we went to a shop, we took one of the engineers with us, and they got to hang out for the week that we were there, and they took notes and they watched and they said, oh, like, I get it now. Like, that's where that thing goes. That's why we do this. Oh, okay. So they're picking up that thing and they're pressing that button. Okay. And when they came back, they were so excited about the app and they were sharing it with all the engineers and they were talking about the process, and like it got them all like really engaged. So anytime we went on a trip, we took an engineer with us. And not only did we take the engineer with us to see as like an engineer, but we got to hang out with them. And we got to like, we would do karaoke or go have dinner or lunch or whatever while we were out of town, and like build relationships with the engineers. So like when we went back, we were all friends and we were talking, and like they weren't scared to bring up
you're a
something
team.
with us. Exactly.
Yeah.
And like it was team building. It was, they got to be part of the process, and they got to appreciate what we did.
Mhm.
And so like we didn't get the silly crayon jokes and all that stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
like they saw us in action and they got to actually experience it firsthand, and they built that empathy for the users. And once that we started doing that, I stopped getting the questions about why we did stuff. And also when we would get in a room and whiteboard, they had really great insights because they understood the process.
Yes.
So like we used to love to do that. Like I go in a whiteboard. That's one of the things I miss the most about like on-site work, is like going in a room with a whiteboard and
Yeah, me
actually
too.
sketching stuff out, and having them do that. And that was like towards the end of the project, but it was just we functioned so much better
It's
towards the
fun.
end. And it
I
was so
found it
much fun.
fun.
It was,
The
yeah.
cool thing about the team we were on, we were a specialized product team, and our product was the patient portal. It's the thing you go in and you see all be like your lab work and all that cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we were the only actual product team like that in the organization. And we sat in this giant room, and it was our room. And there was like sub rooms within the room, but that was ours. And so we were all, no matter who, we had QA in there, we had our developers in there, we had the analysts, everything. We all were in there together. And
Mm.
we all had that one overarching goal, was this is our product. These are our users. And it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of cool. It was one of those moments in my life where I'm like, I really love this model of like a team versus the UX teams over here doing this. And then, you've
Yeah.
got a UX person assigned. I really enjoy that model. I know it doesn't work everywhere, but if you can go someplace and get to actually do like a real product team where you're all together, that's kind of
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's actually very like one of this team that I was on. This is something completely unrelated to I think what we're talking about, but this was to me like one of the best teams I've ever worked on. This was back in New Orleans, by the way. And we had like a culture though. Like the team, the leadership built a culture. Like they fostered the culture, and obviously there's an aspect of the culture from the ground up that like embraced that. But it was an active thing, because there's so many teams that the culture reinforces the silos,
Mhm.
and the culture reinforces the walls between the silos, and it incentivizes the wrong behaviors. to, build those walls and build those silos and not collaborate and not, there's a disincentive there for that. And it's just like a magical thing when you find that. And if you're listening and you're in leadership and you're not fostering that, shame on you. But, I know most of the people listening probably aren't in that capacity to shape that, but that's something like seek that out. If you're a junior designer and you can do your due diligence and do the research on the teams and talk to people before you get the job and you can find that culture, that is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. Like stay there as long as you possibly can and learn as much as you can from that team. But yeah, that's just like a beautiful thing. It's like, and then when you lose it, you're just like, God, I'm never going to get that again,
Part of it is you can choose to do some things too. When you first get hired somewhere in that first few weeks, no matter what your role is, go and find your peers in development, in product management, and set up one-on-ones with them and go, hi, I'm new. Tell me about what you do. I'm super excited. And introduce yourself to them and become friends with them and go, tell me how I can help you. I'd love to blah, 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 blah. And now all of a sudden, all of the main players. You don't have to wait for your manager to create this for you. Maybe I'm just like, do whatever you want. But, they're not going to smack you upside the head if you do this usually. So do it yourself. Don't wait for your boss to make some magic situation happen for you. If you want to have this relationship with your team, go do it. Go meet these people. Even if you're remote, go meet them and mess with them on Slack, whatever, create the relationship yourself.
Absolutely. I love that advice. Yeah, I think that's really important. And that's the other thing too, is like, I don't know of many managers who would actively facilitate those conversations. Like they might advise you to do it, but like if you're not actively doing it yourself, I don't know that would ever happen.
Yeah.
Most managers are not gonna have the time to be like, you need to talk to Jimmy and Jane and Bill and Fred and blah, blah, blah. They're just gonna be like, go meet the team and that's on you. Like, those first 30 days, like you said, like ask as many stupid questions as you can, meet as many people as you can, and just get out there and just make friends. I just think that's like so much. Make friends, find silly things to talk about, find other people who like Rush or Weezer or Legos or whatever. And, and make those connections. And I think like that's how you build really great software.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that to me is like the secret sauce. So Michelle, we've had you for a little while today. Before we get out of here, anything else that we're missing that you think we need to talk about related to this idea that you got to shape the job around you and what you want?
I just want to reiterate, it doesn't matter at what point of your career you're at, if you're right out of something or you've been around for 10 years, there's a lot more power that you have to direct your career than you know. And it's one of the things I tell my employees. I was like, look, your overarching career belongs to you. Don't wait for me to do something for you. If you want to learn something, go learn it. I'm going to give you all the resources I can give. I spend my own money buying ebooks for my team. We go all of our way to find them training opportunities and stuff like that. But I'm like, dude, if you want to know something, go do it. It's what I do. I spent my vacation a few weeks ago getting an AI certificate. I'm on vacation and I'm learning some nerd stuff. Nobody did that for me. No one told me to do that. I'm self-directed, but be self-directed. Own your career. Don't wait for your manager to provide something for you. But also, if you know that you have a trajectory you want to be on, make sure you are having that conversation with your boss, because, there's things that we could possibly do to help that trajectory, but I don't have ESP.
Right.
No one has that. You have to ask for that type of thing and go, what do I need to do to actually get to, from junior to mid to senior? And what does that trajectory feel? Words are hard sometimes, Joe. And I will tell you, sometimes that trajectory is not at the company you're at. And I am very blunt. I will straight up tell employees, look, the thing that you want to do, you're not going to be able to do that here. Eventually, you need to leave if you want to accomplish that. Don't worry about that. You need to don't make the same mistake that I did, where I stayed at a company for 10 years and never got a job title change, even though my responsibilities went up. I never got a job title change. I wound up being the lowest paid person on that team. I was literally directing the work of people who made more than me. Don't do that. You need to leave every few years to make your career actually grow the way you want it to. So Do
Yeah.
that. And that's one of the things I try
Yeah.
to tell people and be very, very honest. I had an employee a few months ago who was terrified to tell me that she found a new job. And I'm like, boo, I ain't your mama. You know, I'm not your cat. I don't tell you what to do. You need to do what's best for you and your family and your career.
Yeah,
And
for
sometimes
sure.
that means you need to leave. And
Yeah.
that's good. And a good manager is going to be your champion. They're going to be happy for you when you leave because they know that
Yes.
you're going to make your career better. If you really want to be a leader, then you need to be willing to let people leave
Hmm.
because that's the best thing for their career. And I'm on a tangent again. Dang it. I can't stay on a straight line to say I'm drunk. Look, anyway.
No, I think that's good advice, but I think that fits perfectly to this, right? Like, if that idea is not just like growing and finding the job at your current company, it's like finding your career. It's finding your role in this, like, the landscape or the whatever you call this, the environment, the ecosystem, I guess, of software.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting too is, like you mentioned briefly, like, UX designers make the best product managers. Like, your job might actually ultimately lead you completely out of the UX field altogether into product. You could still take those human-centered design
Oh, yeah.
principles and apply them to product management. Just because your title is now product manager doesn't mean you're not still helping users at the end of the day,
Yeah. I mean,
building,
I almost
building great
left
software for them.
UX and I was like, I'm just going to go to be a product manager until I got this position because I had tried for so many years to break out and to get like a legitimate, like real
Hmm.
management position. It's like, I'm like, how many years of experience do I need before someone will give me this damn job? But I find, and
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing. A lot of juniors right now are crying that they can't get jobs or where the careers are. Like, there are people like me who are 20, 25 plus years experience and we can't get jobs either.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
So
know that
where's our
feeling.
chance? But anyway, I was about to just like, okay, forget this. I'll just be a product manager because I'm good at this. Um, and if you look at a lot of the job descriptions for product managers right now, they expect you to
Yeah.
basically lead UX. I was reading one this morning. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, hell no, these people would be crazy. They expect you to lead UX and to be responsible for all these UX related things. I'm like, oh, I would lose my mind if a product manager came to me and acted
Oh
like they
yeah.
were in charge of those things. I'd be like, no, you're
Yeah.
not. Let's fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Slow down.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And that's the thing. Like, again, it goes back to what we started the whole conversation with, is like, we talk about, UX design being all over the place. But I mean, I think that's the case for software in general, the roles,
Yeah.
right? Like, product managers, front end engineer, full stack engineer, like all the various engineering titles. I mean, I've seen UI engineer, like there's just like all kinds of crazy titles all
When I
across the
went to
board. I
work in
think.
Invesco, they
Mhm.
had UX developer. And I was like, what the hell is a UX developer? And they
What is
told me, and
that?
I'm like, bitch, you're a front end developer. Calm down. There's nothing you
Oh my
you might
God.
want to edit
Yeah.
that part out. I get a little sassy.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I was like, what, why did you need to stick UX in front of everything? I find that so silly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. But I think it just goes to show that, like, software in general is still 30, 40 years on the Wild West.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an established discipline or practice or whatever. Like, lawyers, we use the analogy of doctors earlier. I mean, that's been what, like a profession for thousands of years, or less or more. I don't know. But when did Hippocrates, was it Hippocrates?
Hippocratic,
Hip, hip,
Hippocrates. Lord have mercy.
Hippocrates, yeah, whatever his name, yeah, Hippocratic oath guy, that
Yeah.
guy, that was ancient Greece, right? So I mean, that discipline's been around for so long, and they've had the ability to, like, sort of mold it and shape it over time. And we are still in the baby stages of what we call software. And so I think there's still teams, companies trying to figure it out. And I think it's interesting because it's like, to kind of loop it back to what we talked about in the beginning. It's like it is kind of overwhelming in a way, because you don't know where to go, you don't know where to start. But at the same time, if you think about it this way, it's like you could literally be anything you want. You could do anything you want. You just have to have the audacity to ask.
Yeah.
That just looping that back. That was like
Yeah.
I didn't plan that, but that was just a good full circle.
I think I posted this on something on LinkedIn a few weeks ago where someone was talking about UX titles and said, baby, your title is whatever your boss says it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is. The titles don't matter at the end of the day. It's the description of what they want you to do. And then once you get there and you really see what's going on, then you figure out what it is you're actually going to do. Because there's your title, there's the job description, and then there's the real job.
Yeah.
And then you can shape that any way you want. I guarantee you can, because I've done it for 25 years straight.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary not knowing what to do,
fun.
you know,
What are you
but it
talking-
is fun for the right people. Some people like, they want the lawyer track. It's like, I go to this school for this amount of years and I do this and I do that. And then I'm a lawyer, you know,
I'm an agent
and
of
I don't know.
chaos, so you know, I like a little bit
I'm
of
with
that.
you. I'm with you. I like that. All right, Michelle. So we've had you for a little bit of time. I've got a series of questions that I like to ask all of my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. You have some time to stick around for 5 silly questions. All right. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
Okay, so in every other situation in my life, I have a carefully constructed hierarchy of what I love. Like, I know my exact favorite band, my exact favorite movie, but for books, I don't. So right now, I'm halfway through Dune. God, this is a
Wow. Good
long-ass
Lord. Halfway.
book.
That's a long book.
It's such a long book. But I recently read.
That book looks like a box.
It's such a big book. I'm like, why it's so big?
Oh my God.
Yeah. I read, I'm gonna say his name wrong. Neil Gaiman or Gaiman? How do you say his
I'm
name?
not sure. I don't know.
But he's, you know, he wrote the Bad Omens. You know, I'm talking, you know who he is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read The House at the End of the Lane, and I loved it. And I was like, it was like, I like the books where you're like, you're at work and you're like, I want to finish the book.
Yeah.
I gotta work. So that was one of those. And then in the past few years, the other book that I read that I love, that it was exactly like that was Project Hail Mary.
I don't think I heard that one.
From the guy what's the guy's name? He wrote The Martian. What is it? Weir?
Oh, yeah, Josh? No, not Josh.
No.
Something. Yeah.
His last name is Weir. But
Yeah.
it's awesome. It's about space and aliens and everything else. And I loved it. I could not sit still when I was working because I wanted to finish the book.
Yeah. So is this one also about space? This new book? No, the one that you were talking about. You said there's another book by Andy Weir.
Project Hail Mary.
Is that about space?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you thought something about the Martian. All of his books are about space. What is
That's
that?
what I figured.
Artemis?
He was like a NASA.
It's about like on the moon, and then Project Hail Mary is it's in space. But yeah, it's awesome. I really enjoyed that one.
I read The Martian on
I loved
vacation.
it.
Like I read it in like a week. It was one of those
So
ones
good.
where you're just like putting it down. It felt like so real, like so realistic.
So
all the stuff he
nerdy.
was
I
doing.
love it.
Yeah. The movie
I love the movie.
Do you like the movie? I mean, the movie wasn't bad. But it was just like I like the book. I like the book better. It was more detailed. Yeah. The book had more detail. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I like them all. Why? You don't have to like just because you like one doesn't mean you can't like the other. All right. What is your favorite non-design podcast?
When I used to commute in Houston, which was about, I used to spend 2 hours a day driving.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Houston sucks. I used to listen to a lot of TED Radio Hour. And I really liked it because it was different topics, but I liked the depth they went into stuff. And I really enjoyed that podcast. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Good answer. All right. You pass. All right. What is your favorite meal?
All right. We got to go on a little trip. So I have.
All right. Let's do it.
All right. So first we got to go to New Orleans. I'm sorry. That's where we're going to go do this.
All right.
So
works for me.
We might even have to go back in time because I don't know if all these places either still exist or if they still serve this. But first we're going to go to Whole Foods on Vets.
Still
because
there.
They used to make this shrimp po' boy that was. Now, maybe it's because I asked it to be made this way. I don't know. But it was on focaccia with crawfish remoulade and goat cheese with fried shrimp.
On shrimp? That is an interesting sandwich. All right. Okay. All right.
It's bougie.
We went, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but this is funny. We went home a couple weeks ago and we went to this place called Salvo's in Belle Chase on the West Bank. We were staying at my brother-in-law's house. My brother-in-law's wife, I guess, was that my sister-in-law? I don't know. She ordered a shrimp po' boy with American cheese and onions and mustard. And when I ordered it, the girl looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, this is not for me. I don't.
You know what is so funny is for a hot second I lived in Jackson, Mississippi, working at a job. And I went to this restaurant one time for lunch and they had red beans and rice. And I was like, okay, let's try that. Yeah. And the lady is like, would you like cheese on that? And I was like, this woman be crazy because she just said, do I want cheese on my red beans and rice I was like, no, baby, I don't want that. Nobody wants that. I was like, oh Lord. I was having one of those connection moments. I was like, I need a fan. Woo!
How
Yeah,
did the red beans taste?
they're fine.
Yeah,
Whatever.
we
They're like,
ordered red beans from a place up here in Cincinnati, and it had tomatoes in it. And I was like, this is not red beans.
okay. Okay, so we got the po' boy.
All right, so you got the po' boy. All right,
Now we're going to
what's
PJs
what you got
because
next?
I need a granita.
PJs. Oh yeah,
I'm
gotta get your
sorry, I need a
granita. Yeah, girl.
For
We
those
got
who
one of
don't
those.
know, a granita
Oh,
is cold pressed coffee, milk and sugar. Put a daiquiri machine.
Man, we went through the PJs when we were back home.
Yeah.
My wife was like, I need a granita, so because I just had a coffee from somewhere else we went, like it wasn't even good. And I was like, nah, I'm good. I just had a coffee. And then as soon as we left the drive-thru, I was like, God damn it, why didn't I get a granita? Oh man, the wedding cake too. When the wedding cake coffee. Oh,
It's so funny because I got one for my brother and my nephew. We recently drove through Louisiana to get to Florida, but that's one other story, to go see my mom in February. And we stopped at PJ's and I was like, yeah, I want a granita. And they're like, oh my God. I was like, they said, look, they had this Mardi Gras, whatever. What did you say it was? King cake?
Wedding cake. Oh, they had a king
this
cake
was
one?
king cake.
That was
Sorry.
king
They
cake.
had a
Okay.
king
Oh, like
cake
cinnamon, I
flavored,
guess.
whatever the hell. And I was like, what the hell does that taste like? So I got them that, and they're like slurping it up and loving it. But it's funny. Like people are like, oh, and then you get them something, and they're so happy.
Yeah, and then they love it. Yeah, of course.
Okay,
All
so
right,
we got
so
a
you had your
granita.
PJs. What's next? Where are we going next?
Now we're going to Bobby's Seafood on Jeff Highway in River Ridge.
I've never been there. Okay.
I hope they still exist, but they had the best onion rings. And I'm talking legit onion rings. I'm one of those onion ring snobs. Every time I go somewhere and there's onion rings on the menu, I said, tell me about your onion ring. Do they come out of a bag? Or are they like hand breaded, beautiful? Yeah.
Do they
These were the beautiful
little
salty,
corn
crunchy,
flour?
happy.
You gotta get the cornmeal.
It's no flour.
You like the flour? I like the ones with a little bit of
I
cornmeal.
don't like cornmeal. Cornmeal, you know what's nasty? It's cornmeal encrusted shrimp. Throw it in the garbage. Trash.
Really? Okay.
It's trash. I'm a flour girl.
All right. We used to go back in the day. We used to go to Layuz's Mid City, not Layuz's by the track, but the other Layuz's.
Oh, okay.
And they had the best onion rings, but they had like, you might not like them, but they were like corn flour. It was like mixed with flour.
It depends on the mix.
But,
maybe if it wasn't overly corny.
Okay. All right.
We got onion ring.
What else?
But while we were at PJ's, we also got a buttercream square. Have you ever had a buttercream square from PJ's?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So I got the buttercream square, but I brought from home my homemade coffee ice cream because, of course, I make my own coffee ice cream.
Watch out.
It's
what coffee
whole
do you use
milk
to make it?
that's been whipped.
All right.
It's condensed milk, sweetened condensed milk, espresso powder, a little bit of maple syrup because I'm like Buddy the Elf. I want to put maple syrup on everything. Yes. And then chocolate chips. And you don't even need the machine, but if you got the machine, that's fine. You can basically take it and put that. Now, you've got to take the whipped cream and you need to use like a KitchenAid or whatever.
Yeah.
It needs to be whipped.
Uh-huh.
Then you fold in your other ingredients. And then you put that in a container and put it in the freezer. And like every 45 minutes, you just like spin it around. And it's delicious. Or you could put it in your little Cuisinart, whatever. But
all right. I love it. Sounds good. So here's the thing about PJs. You may have noticed this too, and I don't know how many people in New Orleans notice this. Maybe everybody, but like because it's a franchise, they are so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like there is one by our old house in Algiers that had the best damn cold brew, and then there was another one like I don't know somewhere out in like New Orleans or Metairie or somewhere. And it was awful. We would sound like, this is terrible. Every time we go, I expect it to be better, and it's still terrible. I'm like, how are all these PJs so inconsistent?
So I worked
when
at
it
PJs.
comes to.
I used to work at PJs by UNO when I was there years ago. And back then, the granita was a recipe. And it was very specific. I think at some point they went to like a pre-mix, but it's still very like, it's up to each whatever location, how often they clean the machine, all that stuff. I used to think that the original PJs that was it Maple Street?
Maple Street, yeah.
They always had the best granita. The granita was always perfect. So that you start to know that there's certain locations where it's never funky or off. It's always perfect. And that's all I ever get there anyways is granita. But you start to go like, oh, they got the good granita. Like,
Yeah.
hit or miss.
Exactly. But like it ruins the point of like the franchise though, right? Like it's like I expect the PJs. I go to McDonald's, I expect a Big Mac, you know? And I go to PJ, you got to know which PJs. I don't know. It's just New Orleans. Everything in New Orleans is just weird.
Yeah.
That's the thing about New Orleans. You just got to know what to do. All right. So where else we going? We're done? Is that everything?
I think that's enough food. But
all right, so you got your Whole Foods po' boy. You got your onion rings from where was it again? Bobby's. And you got your granita. All right,
and my buttercream square and my coffee.
And your buttercream square. Yeah, there you go. All right, all right.
Lots of coffee. So I'm turned to 11 or to 12, whichever
to 12.
one.
We went past.
Mine goes to 12 because it's
this
more
one
special.
goes to 12.
That's
all
right.
Right. What is your favorite vacation spot?
So I've been here twice. I've been to the Portland area twice, and I really love that area a lot. I love how green it is.
Yeah.
And just how lush everything is there. And the last time I went, I did like a road trip, and I started in Portland and I went to Crater Lake, and then I went like to the woods somewhere, and then I went over to the coast, and then I went all the way up to Cannon Beach to where Goonies was shot and all that good stuff.
Oh,
I
awesome.
just adore that area. I think the whole Pacific Northwest area, like last year I went on a Alaskan cruise, and we went out of awesome. Seattle. And then we got to go up to that part of Alaska that's
I bet that
really
was so pretty.
verdant. That's actually more like a rainforest. And I just love all of that just green. Like I keep imagining there's going to be like freaking like dinosaurs and stuff. Like I just love that. So I want to go where possibly some cool dinosaurs could be.
I love it. Have you been to Portland when it was rainy all the time, or did you go when it was sunny?
I don't think it was sunny like I'm used to down here, but it wasn't like raining the whole time. But it was funny because it was like mist, and I was like,
Misty.
oh,
okay.
this is fine. My hair would be looking straight and muffled all the time, but this is fine.
So the reason why I ask is because we went. It was in November or September.
Oh no, I've never been that time of year.
Well, here's the thing: we went, and my buddy was like, "It's going to be raining the whole time," and we went. And we hung out with my friend that lived in Portland, and it was beautiful. I mean, sunny, no clouds in the sky. It was just beautiful weather. And we were like, oh, this is amazing. We could move here. He's like, this is so abnormal. He's like, it's never like this. It's always like overcast and cloudy, and people have to have like special lights in their house because they get depressed. And I was like, really? This is so cool. Like, how could you get depressed here? But anyway, apparently it was like a fluke. But we did the Cascades train, Amtrak, from Portland to Seattle. That was really cool. That was a lot of fun. It was so pretty. But anyway, I love Pacific Northwest myself. Yeah. All right. What is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
Well, funny thing is Figma is not my favorite design tool, period.
All right.
I still prefer me some Sketch. But back in the day, I was a fireworks girl. I love fireworks. I started using it in like, 99? Yeah, and I used it until it became unstable, like after Adobe acquired Macromedia and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I'm starting to use Figma more because my team uses it, but there are so many little things that just make me want to punch a wall with it. And I'm just like, what did they do there? But I'm learning it. I don't want to be one of those inflexible old people like, no. But one of the things I tell, because I teach a class literally on like design tools and stuff, is like the new hotness today is gonna die. I mean, as we saw with Envision, as we saw with what's the other thing that died?
Well, Sketch, Envision.
No, Sketch ain't dead. No, Envision died.
Oh, did they kill off XD? I didn't know they killed off XD. Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you world, like Envision was the cool place to be, and
well, the reason why I say Sketch, because we used to use it at work, and like we tied. I mean, well, Sketch. I say Sketch tied like their entire future almost in prototyping on like Envision, and I mean they tried to build their own prototyping feature, but it wasn't nearly as like robust. I don't think, at least as Envision prototyping was. But like I don't know. It's like you tie your well, they both, it was like sort of like a mutual thing too, I guess, because Envision tied their future to Sketch, and Sketch also like tried to like offload their
extensible
prototype.
It has such a robust extension. What is it called? Or plugin?
Those plugins,
you can make it do anything you want it to do, and it never really needed. To me, prototyping. If you want to talk about prototyping, your ass needs to go get Axure. I don't want to hear about the dumb bull crap you're doing in Figma. those kind of nonsense
Oh
prototyping
man, I
stuff.
miss
There are
Acture.
better
I love
tools.
Acture.
Even Protopie is better. So I
Yeah.
think if you are really trying to create robust interactive prototypes, go get the right tool for that, because it's not that.
It's not a static image. All right. Well, that is it, Michelle. We are done for today. Before we get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you. Give yourself a little plug.
Yeah, I'm mostly on LinkedIn. Honestly, I think that's probably the most robust UX community, even though there's some kooky birds there.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably where I'm at the most. I try to post a few times a week, and I'm always lurking. So
Right on. Hell yeah. All right, Michelle. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your insights. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.